Hey folks, it's Marvin Cash, the host of The Articulate Fly. On this episode, I'm joined by Cody Richardson of Cody's Fish. Cody shares his fishing and artistic journey, and we take a deep dive into his incredibly unique license plate artwork. I think you're really going to enjoy this one. But before we get to the interview, just a couple of housekeeping items. If you like the podcast, please tell a friend, and please subscribe and leave us a rating or review in the podcatcher of your choice. It really helps us out. And thanks to our friends at the Fly Fishing Show for sponsoring the episode. The 2025 season is wrapping up with one last stop in Lancaster, PA on March 15th and 16th. Come out and visit with old friends and make a few new ones. It should be a great time. For ticket and class info and other event details, head over to www.flyfishingshow.com. And a shout out to our sponsor, Trout Routes. We all know streams are getting crowded, and chances are you're not the only one at your local access point. Get away from the crowds and busy gravel lots by using Trout Routes Pro with over 350,000 access points mapped across 50,000 trout streams and much more. Trout Routes has all the data you need to help you find angling opportunities that others will overlook. Up your game and download the app today. Use code ARTFLY20, ARTFLY20, all one word, for 20% off of your Trout Routes Pro membership at maps.troutroutes.com. Now, on to our interview. Well, Cody, welcome to the Articulate Fly.
Marvin, I appreciate it.
Yeah, looking forward to our conversation, and we have a tradition on the Articulate Fly. I like to ask all of our guests to share their earliest fishing memory.
Ooh. Well, so I grew up in Colorado, and earliest fishing memory is tough. I would say, I have photos of my dad literally giving me casting lessons with a fly rod in the front yard when I was like barely able to stand up. But of course, I don't remember that. What I do remember would be in a stream, and it would be, I had a cane pole, but my dad would put flies on the cane pole. And so it was really kind of like a high sticking, kind of almost like what Euro nymphing is nowadays, but with a cane pole, which is, it's the same darn thing, really, or, whatever you want to call it. But I would be doing that in streams with wet flies and dry flies as a kid. And other times it was, dunking a worm in a lake with that same cane pole, but I used that thing all over the place. I think it was like 12 foot long. And so that would be the first one. I remember doing that. And so when I started really, kind of fly fishing and kind of getting back to some of those trout techniques later, like it really became pretty natural to me after starting off like that.
Very neat. So are you not a worm dunker / gear guy turned fly fisherman? Were you always a fly fisherman?
So I started off that way as far as, with the cane pole and learning to basically fly fish in the beginning. And then I went to the early days of the ISC shows. And back then, it was really big back then. And they had, the fishing tanks, and they had all the guys with the flashy spin cast rods. And I wanted a Zebco 33 with a ugly stick so they aren't bad. And I got one of those things. And so then I learned to do traditional gear fishing from there. So I was actually first fly fishing, and then with maybe some poor guidance from the show, started doing some gear fishing. But it was great. I learned that also, and was able to go back to fly fishing later on in life.
Very, very neat. So who are some of the folks that have mentored you on your fly fishing journey, and what did they teach you?
Oh, man. So with me growing up, earlier on, I learned how to fly fish, and, my dad pulled me away from doing the Zebco thing and kind of got me back into fly fishing. And, we got into traditional fly fishing. It was great. He was teaching me how to do that. Well, he unfortunately passed away when I was 10 years old. He was in a car accident. And, from there, I kind of stayed away from fishing for a little bit. I did some here and there, but it was just difficult for me doing it and not having a vehicle and not having anyone to go with and all that type of stuff. And then started getting back into it in my in my teens a lot, but a lot of it when I was in my teens was because I was went to a high school in Fort Collins, and there's a well-known fly tyer that you guys probably know named Rick Takahashi. And Rick Takahashi was my art teacher in high school. And there was a few other great teachers in that school. Scott Kemp was another one to recognize, but those guys were definitely a huge influence in me getting back into fly fishing. And so Takahashi, being he was an art teacher, avid fly tyer, avid fly fisherman, and he taught me how to tie flies again. And we started getting after it, and he over and over, and I was able to take those things to the river on the weekends and catch fish myself, and it brought me back into the sport. So,
Yeah, very, very neat. And, before we start talking more about Cody's fish, I was really kind of curious kind of how you got into metalworking.
well, it wasn't really ever a metalworking type of thing that I was ever into. It was more woodworking. Metal thing kind of came upon when I had the idea of Cody's fish, of the artwork to do. But before that, it was all woodworking and making furniture and learning how to use tools and uh, preferring to make artwork rather than on canvas and something you can kind of hold.
Yeah, very, very neat. And so tell us, where did the idea for Cody's fish come from?
So at the time, I worked for a fire department for quite a while, and moved back to the Front Range of Colorado, where I needed a job, and found a company that was there was a hazmat company. So basically, this job, a bunch of things happened where they were sending me out to try to kill me every darn week, but ended up on the road with them, traveling to different places and having a bunch of stops. And what was nice about that is if I finished up my work quick enough, I was able to go fish in these wonderful places, being that my route was basically Colorado, Wyoming, Montana, and a little bit of Idaho. So I was among some of the best trout fishing waters of the West. And so anyway, I was doing that, and completely all my time while I was driving, I was thinking about fishing. And one of the times when I was on my way back home to Colorado in the night, I was driving along, and I had this idea that, well, at the time, everyone was really proud of the state flags, and everyone in Colorado was wearing the Colorado flag on their shirt and their hats and blah, blah, blah. And I had this idea of making a fish out of the Colorado license plate, because the flag is really cool, but so is the license plate. And then I'm like, all these license plates from all these states have such a great detail and so much artwork to them. They're so darn cool looking. Why not make a fish out of one of these? And so I ended up coming back to Colorado, and I went on this crazy hunt. I thought it was going to be easy to find some license plates, but it's really actually hard, because all these scrap yards, they're not allowed to just keep the license plates. They have to turn them back into the state so they can reuse those numbers. And so I ended up finding this place that sold antique auto parts, and they happened to have a collection of old license plates from the 60s. And anyway, I was able to purchase some of those from them, and started making a few pieces with that. And so that's kind of the beginning idea of it, was just to make something like that. It really didn't have a huge business goal or anything like that in mind. It was just trying to make something cool that really appealed to myself.
Interesting. And so roughly when was that?
I believe that was 2013. I made two pieces, went in to a couple of the fly shops locally. There was Anglers All, there was Charlie's Fly Box, which is Charlie Craven, and Minturn Anglers was the next day. And I remember that first day was, the first two shops, Anglers All and Charlie's Fly Box. I was kind of like a local, like a regular into those shops. And I brought both of those shops a piece and showed it to them. And they pretty much said the same exact thing to me. They're like, Cody, it's cool, I like it, unique idea, but we've tried selling artwork in fly shops. And unfortunately, artwork just doesn't really sell really well in fly shops. But being that it's something unique, let's go for it. Let's see what it does. And so they gave me the opportunity, and I went home and I made two pieces for each of those shops, of those two shops. Minter Anglers was about a week later. But anyway, I brought those two pieces back to them. Anglers all sold both of them before they got a chance to hang up on the wall. And Charlie Craven, he sold both of them within the first 2 days. And so it was just like, oh man, this is awesome, and we just kind of kept going with it from there. And it just kind of happened really organically, of adding different states, different types of fish, and just growing and growing from there.
Yeah, really neat. Speaking of different kinds of fish, I mean, you got tons of different designs, and we'll talk a little bit later about, I know you've branched into hunting and stuff too. Where do you kind of get the ideas about, what fish you want to do next, and maybe how you want to do the kind of the graphic design?
Yeah, absolutely. The fish I want to do next, it's either, kind of whatever's happening in my life. So if I'm seeing something that I think would be a good idea to make and come out with, then I'll do that. But right now, honestly, it's most of the people that are reaching out to me and being like, hey, can you make a Dorado or whatever it might be? And I'm like, well, heck yeah. And so you get that inspiration. And then from there, you're going to start have to building it and kind of thinking about the customer and, their story of how they caught that piece and where it was at, and, what they were doing, and trying to capture that moment and give them a piece that is going to make them think about where they were at, that's authentic to that place.
Very neat. And so, I know that sounds almost like you've almost transitioned now almost to more of a commission type of creation process. But, are there other like designers or creatives that you kind of watch to, get ideas that are for Cody's Fish or maybe for some other kind of artistic project?
I mean, I think for my own stuff, I kind of go after my own, from either the, what's happening, where I'm living, like right now I live, in Florida. And so there's a hogfish, for instance, that is just so darn cool looking. I never would have thought to make one of those things when I lived in Colorado. Or when I was in Colorado, I wanted to produce, or not produce, I'm sorry, but to come up with a brown trout. Absolutely love the brown trout, the butter belly brown trout. And so I worked on that piece for a long time, and came up with the silhouette that, I personally love a lot. So yeah, I mean, that's kind of one of the things that it'll come up through, things that are happening in my life or whatever, people are asking me to do.
Yeah, really neat. And so, once you kind of have an idea or a concept, can you walk us through kind of the process from sort of idea to finished project?
Absolutely. So some of the pieces I will just take find a photo. If, for instance, I haven't, caught say a blue marlin in a long time, but I want to get a neat photo of a blue marlin, or a silhouette, I should say. So I'll look around through photos of them, internet, whatever it might be. And a lot of times what I'll do is I'll take that and I'll use that photo, blow it up and have it printed out, and then kind of make adjustments how I feel to give it more life to the piece. So I'll cut it out on paper and then trace it out. And then I'll kind of look at it and be like, it's a neat looking piece, natural how it is, but to show its silhouette a little bit more, I'm going to add a little bit here, add a little bit there, come up with it. Other ones would just be like I was talking before about the brown trout, where I'll lay that thing out on paper and I completely drew that up from memory. Next night I came to it, came out to the garage, played some music, poured myself a nice beverage and kind of changed it a little bit. And then the next day went and looked at it again. It was right how I wanted it and kept it how it is.
Yeah, neat. And so when you draw them out and blow them up, are you like cutting them out on like like MDF or something like that? Is that kind of the framework, or are you freehand putting these all together?
Yeah. Yeah, sorry, I didn't completely answer that question, did I? Yeah, so anyway, I'm drawing them out, and what I'll do is I'll create a template. The template I typically do on paper first, then I transfer that to plastic, and I'll cut that out onto a plastic sheet, keep that template from there. Then I actually go into making the piece of artwork. So the piece of artwork, what I'll use is a Baltic birch, which is a plywood, but it's like a cabinet grade plywood that's made in in Russia. The stuff that I use, the reason why I use it is because there's no voids in it. It's really strong and it's really nice looking. It's not like something you can buy from Home Depot. So I'll trace it out, cut it out of that with a jigsaw. And then I take that piece of wood and I paint it with an exterior grade paint over it, because the idea is to make these things where they can be outdoors or indoors, however they want to be displayed. From there, then the big part of it is the license plates. We could get into, how I source the license plates and how I choose the license plates and go from there. But there's a layout of it, which actually is some of the more painstaking time of it. But that's, laying them out and getting the angle right, getting the colors right, and getting them to fit all on how I wanted to do it. And I do that, and then I cut them all out with from there with 10 snips, basically, once they're all screwed down into place. And then cut relief edges and wrap all the license plates around the sides of the art piece, so it also looks really good from an angle. And then after all of that stuff is doing it, and I'm pounding on these darn things and making it look just right, I do a clear coat over the top, which really brings out the colors, especially if there's some rust involved or some of the colors need to kind of be brought out to life. That clear coat really, really does it, and it actually adds another protection level with the UV inhibitors on it.
Yeah, it's neat. It makes me sounds like it's almost like putting doing brick pavers, or like putting down flooring, where you're like lay all the pieces out before you start nailing them down.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Yeah. That's, a lot of people are asking me, how I get the license plates and how long, it takes me to make a piece, which I have a hard time answering that question, but, because everyone's so different. But a large part of it is the getting the right plates and getting them in the right spot, and to where we have a mixture of colors that all play together really nice.
Yeah, and we'll talk in just a second about kind of the procurement process for getting all these license plates that you're not supposed to have. But other than that, is there some other kind of surprise that most people wouldn't realize kind of in the production process?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the surprise that people wouldn't realize, I think a lot of people, when they see the pieces, are surprised how much of the actual hands-on labor I put into each one. They're like, oh, so you have a CNC, which probably would be a smart thing after a certain point, but I change up so many different pieces and designs, and I really like the enjoyment of doing stuff by hand. So, it's the cutting the stuff out by hand with, the jigsaws and such, and using the actual, hammer and chisels to wrap all the license plates. That's the thing that a lot of people seem to be shocked about, how I do that.
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, the kind of, I guess, kind of the artistic love and craft of it is kind of what makes it special. I mean, if you started, kind of industrializing it, it wouldn't be nearly as cool, would it?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, people come to me, they're like, Cody, why don't you just get fake license plates made? You could do that. You could probably buy a machine or something that would do that. I'm like, no, that takes away all the story behind everything. All these plates have, I'm looking at the duck that's sitting on my table right now, and it has this Louisiana license plate, for instance. It was in a structure fire. And so it's got little burnt up edges on it, and you have the Missouri license plate from the, 1976 200-year anniversary. And, just all these plates that have all these neat stories. And, and that's a migration area for a duck, for instance. but the trials, every piece has got its own little story behind it. You can talk about all the plates and what they mean for the area and all that at the same time. So I always want to keep it at that they can make it custom for the person, so they have that same story to tell.
Yeah, very, very neat. And, kind of on the procurement side, I mean, I think you literally are collecting plates from all 50 states. And I think I've seen a lobster where you had Bahamian license plates. So kind of how do you source all these things?
Good question. Yeah, so I have plates from every state in the United States. Probably have I'm out in my shop right now, and I probably have about 20,000 license plates in here, I'm guessing. I just actually bought a big old pallet rack to help out with that. So a lot of the domestic ones are from, there's a whole network of pickers that are, travel the country year round, and collectors. They're just license plate collectors. But these guys that are pickers they're a lot like pretty much exactly like the guys you see on the American Pickers TV show. And that's what they do. They travel around and they get the most amazing antiques. But when they see license plates, they know that they have this guy that is obsessed with fishing and will buy the license plates from them. So they call me up and they're like, hey, I'm in Kansas City or Texas or wherever they may be, and I have these, and this is what I can do for you, and we make deals from there. So that's one of those things that's kind of built up over time, and I purchased a lot of my bulk, and I'm really concentrating on getting these old license plates because there's a huge shift from kind of pre-1970s and earlier, where they had a lot of good colors. After that, they tend to go into more white license plates, which some of them can be really cool also. But so that's how I get most of the domestic ones. Some of the times I have people call up and they're like, our family, our grandpa had a bunch of them hanging in their barn, and we're looking at, we've seen what you do and we like to sell them to you, which is fantastic when that happens. And then besides that, the ones from other countries is really fun scavenger hunt fishing trips to where I've been able to go to, Cuba, the Bahamas, Bolivia, Belize, all these different countries on kind of these scavenger hunts for license plates. And you're also, of course, the whole idea of going on a fishing trip is you're going hunting, and you're kind of like on a mission in two different ways, and as you probably know, I'm sure, Marvin, you've been on some destination fishing trips before.
Yes.
And with these destination fishing trips, we get to see a different vacation than the average vacation goer in the United States gets to do. We get to go to some of these lodges and just actually see the culture and see the people and go do such a neat thing. When I get to go do these trips where I'm, scavenging license plates and going fishing, you kind of get a double. Some of the times you're in like a nice lodge, you're like, all right, well, hey, I'm heading out for a few days, and I'm going to be crawling around in some of your salvage yards. You end up some wild things. But between those two, with the domestic gathering of license plates from pickers and people's collections and such, to these overseas travels, that's how I come about all these license plates.
Yeah, pretty neat. Do you have a particular plate or plates that kind of are, kind of stand out in your memory as kind of a really spectacular find?
Well, okay, so let's say Cuba. Cuba definitely would be. As we know, we have such a rich history, America and Cuba, with, everything political. Basically, there's a whole embargo period with them. And with that being said, I searched for a long, long time, and amongst many, many conversations and emails and stuff, I basically found a gentleman that lives in Cuba that has the old style Cuban license plates. The new style ones are kind of like the European. They're long and skinny and white and really boring. And you'd be, basically locked up and thrown away if you ever tried taking those out of the country. But the old ones, you can. The only problem is no one has them. I went on a fishing trip with Avalon one time, and I went to Havana, and I spent 3 days in Havana thinking for sure I'm going to get them, and I came out completely empty-handed. And everyone said the exact same word, that it's impossible. And they had all these fake ones for sale, but the real ones, it was impossible. And then I came back to the States, and then a year or two later, ended up finding this gentleman who happens to be a lawyer in Cuba that has a Cuban museum, and it's under like 3 layers of locked gates that I had to go through. And this gentleman has the old license plates, and he also has all this old, governmental propaganda from previous presidents that he's kind of like locking up and holding there as for people to be able to remember the past, because it's not really traditionally liked around there for them to remember the past of Cuba. But he has all them, and I was able to get a bunch of these old license plates from him, and they have spectacular colors. I mean, if you've ever been fishing in Cuba, with a permit and a tarpon and snook and all these wonderful fish, it's just such a cool place. It's amazing. It's only 90 miles away from Key West.
Yeah, pretty neat. And, it's interesting because I noticed, I think the last time I saw you at the Denver Fly Fishing Show, I had noticed that you were starting to branch out into to more traditional hunting stuff, deer, birds, dogs. I was kind of curious, is that dovetail with you getting kind of back into hunting, or was there something else that kind of pulled you in that direction?
Yeah, I've always loved hunting. It's never been quite the obsession it is for me with fishing. I mean, I'm sure a lot of your listeners can understand with me, to where if I'm spacing out, there's a high likelihood I'm probably thinking of a different technique to catch fish, or new way to do it. But I absolutely love hunting myself. With that being said, yeah, it's just taken off the hunting world with this. I've been doing a lot of work with Ducks Unlimited in this last year, Rocky Mountain Elk Foundation, starting off with Pheasants Forever, like you wouldn't believe, turkey, all of it. So it's been really, really going well with that. And it's kind of a whole new world to stepping into. It's been a lot of fun.
Yeah, and it's so, I think doing the rough math, right, you've been doing Cody's Fish for a little over a decade. What's been your biggest kind of surprise or challenge as you've grown the business?
Surprise is how to come in this business. In the beginning, you think you can, walk in and show these people your artwork and they're going to buy it. But sometimes it ends up them coming to you later and asking you if they can buy it from you. But really the biggest challenge in all of that is just owning your own business. It's a wild thing, and it's a small business that I have, but there's so many different things that you have to do, or, all these people in your industry that are doing the same type of thing, from being their own, fishing guide, owning a fly shop, owning a small company, whatever it may be. To see small challenges of, all the different angles that it takes to own your own company. And it's a blast. We're so blessed that we get to live in America at this time and be able to do this. But there's a lot that goes into it, and trying to balance your time and your resources to be able to do it it's great. I'm glad I'm able to do it.
Yeah, it's funny you say that, because I'm sort of in the same boat, and it's, there's all this tremendous freedom that you have, but, the buck literally stops with you, right?
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Every day you wake up, and you have your plan for the week, and you might as well tear that up and throw it away by Monday afternoon. Because it doesn't always go quite that way. But every week we get a little bit smarter and have more fun, and so going after it every week, trying to be smart with business, and make the best thing you can possibly do while raising children, and making sure to get out of the water and, show the children, your children and yourself, and, what it is and why we're all doing this.
Yeah, very neat. And so you got tired of being cold in the wintertime and you moved to Florida a couple years ago. How has that kind of changed or influenced your work at Cody's Fish?
Well, so yeah, I decided to make the big change from Colorado. Things were changing in Colorado a little bit, and it was just time for me to make a change in my life. I'll always be a huge fan of trout. There's some people that move to the salt water and they may, say poo trout. They're still the best, one of the best fish to ever catch on a fly rod. Absolutely will always love them. But out here, yeah, it's absolutely changed things. I love the change. The people are wonderful. The fishing is incredible. And for the most part, I would say the big change is like all these other type of pieces I would have never thought to make. I think I mentioned earlier hogfish, for instance, and I'm in my room. I'm in my shop, and I have all my silhouettes on the wall. So I'm just kind of sitting in my chair looking at different silhouettes of things I probably wouldn't have made before. But yeah, hogfish is one. A lobster, for instance, different things like that. Pelagic species like grouper. I never thought how much I would love catching a grouper because I've always been into the big three when it comes to salt water, the bonefish, permit, and tarpon. But man, grouper are amazing fish to catch. And so I've been making those and shark and wahoo, the whole deal. So a lot of those, and then a lot of the colors too. And just the Florida, getting the greens, these lighter colors that a lot of the people like around here, trying to make things for the places I love.
Yeah, very cool. Do you have any other projects, Cody, you want to, share with our listeners?
Oh gosh, let me see here. Well, right now, I've been doing a lot of sports teams pieces in the last few days. Been a lot higher detail type stuff than sometimes what I do, but they've been turning out really cool. They're fun. So love those. What else? I just made a piece. I think we could probably say it now because by the time this goes live, that they'll probably have received it by now. But I just did a piece for Turtle Box Audio. Really cool piece of one of their speakers. Make sure to check it out if you guys can. It's a cool piece. And then besides that, it's been a lot of more of my traditional type stuff. I just came out with a 4-foot sailfish piece that I absolutely love. I need to catch one of those things on the fly one time because they're such spectacular fish. And this 4-foot version just looks really cool.
Neat. And so, folks wanted to check out your work. Where should they go?
CodysFish.com. And that's plural. So CODYSFISH.com.
Awesome.
And, I'm on social media too. Is Cody Richardson's Creations on Instagram. And I believe it's the same on Facebook also, but probably best on the website.
Yeah. And so what I'll do is I'll drop links to all that stuff in the show notes, Cody.
Yes. Thanks, man.
Yeah, you bet. And so, I think, I guess one last question before we talk about show season stuff. Is there anything else it doesn't even have to be Cody Fish related, fishing adventures or anything else you want to share with our listeners before I let you go tonight?
Yeah. I mean, we're all fly fishermen and, we get into this sport because we like to work a little bit harder and to do things the right way. With that being said, one of the best things that we have with fly fishing is the travel aspect of it. We can get into fly fishing in so many different angles if you want to get into it, but with the travel, I suggest that you guys go out, girls, guys, whoever you are, and travel to some of these places because we have such a wonderful benefit of being able to see the world in a different perspective than the average traveler gets to do. And I just think it's the neatest thing for you guys to be able to, all of us, to be able to go to, Bolivia, Argentina, Bahamas, stateside, Louisiana, Florida, all these places, and see it from an angler where you could, either go, fish it without a lodge or go to a lodge where you get to know the people that are working it and get to know, the captains that are working there, all that type of stuff. It's a really amazing opportunity that we have that 99% of the other population doesn't have.
Yeah, and it's also a great way to make the wintertime go a little bit faster, planning a trip when it gets warm, right?
Oh, gosh. Absolutely. And if you, like myself, I grew up as a trout fisherman. And if you ever want any advice about how to get into saltwater fishing, please reach out to me. But my first thing I'll say is, basically two things. Either go to the Bahamas going for bonefish, or go to Louisiana in the wintertime for redfish. They're both amazing trips. I'd probably kind of go more towards the Bahamas if you can do it, but because it's just the most amazing experience. But it's something that's just like, it will change your life for the better, and it's only a good thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know we spoke before we started recording, and you're not, folks won't see you this year at the fly fishing shows, but you've got some other kind of more local events kind of around Florida that you're going to do. So if folks wanted to catch up with you in Florida, where should they go?
Yeah, so I've been doing the fly fishing show for about 10 years. Absolutely love that show, and I plan on being back to it next year. I actually kind of accidentally double booked myself into where I'm doing this Quest for the Crest sailfish tournament this year that is overlapping on the same days. But I'm going to be at some of the other art shows, down on Isla Mirada and such. So some of the more local ones down in Naples and things like that here. And then, but next year I'll be back at the fly fishing shows.
Got it. And so for the more local events, or do you have an event page on your website, or is it best to just follow you on social media?
Nope, that's a really good idea, but social media will definitely have them.
There you go. Well, listen, Cody, I super appreciate you spending some time with me this evening.
Absolutely, Marvin. No, my pleasure. It's great to speak to you. Thank you, and everyone. Thank you so much.
Take care.
You too, bud. Cheers.
Well, folks, we hope you enjoyed the interview as much as we enjoyed bringing it to you. Don't forget to check out Trout Routes Pro at maps.troutroutes.com. Use ARTFLY20, ARTFLY20, all one word, to get 20% off of your membership. Tight lines, everybody.